Order! Order! You are an incorrigible delinquent at times. Behave yourself, man!
Taking a couple of questions forward from that last hour discussing Grenfell Tower, and I'll try and get answers to them in the coming days. I'll turn your attention next to a question that was answered at least in part yesterday, and that is under what circumstances will north of 3 million people who thought Britain was their home be allowed to retain that belief? And in fact, will it ever feel like home if you have to jump through hoops that the rest of us don't have to jump through? I can't help thinking, and again, I'm going to sort of caveat what follows with that reminder of what we try to do together every day on the programme, which is just imagine what it's like to be somebody else. So, you know, I think most usefully it's probably the work that we've done trying to defend the interests of black cab drivers that comes in most helpful at this point in proceedings, because if you're sticking up for black cab drivers, the idea that you're also sticking up for foreigners for the same reason hopefully shuts down some of the more obvious responses and criticisms. If I was linguistically versatile, if I could speak more than one language, and I was considerably more talented than I am now, if I had lots more qualifications than I have, and I was ambitious and open-minded enough to really fancy living in a foreign country, a foreign city, a foreign capital, and I lived in what is currently called the European Union, and I was thinking of hitting the road in the next few months, where would I go? Would I go to London? Or would I go to Frankfurt? Or Dublin, maybe? Madrid? Rome? Be nice. Where would I go? I mean, just genuinely, hand on heart, straight call, where would you go? If you want to come to Britain, you can't do this and you can do that. You've got to sign this, you've got to carry that, you've got to do this. And what? Why? That's one line of argument, although it is considerably harder to move to and settle in other European Union countries than it is this one, for reasons that were never, ever, ever explained by either side during the referendum campaign. More importantly is this. I follow social media quite closely. I love it, but I'm well aware of everything that's vile and wrong about it as well. For me, the pros outweigh the cons, but if I guess that depends how thick your skin is. Social media divided yesterday, and it was an odd division that I hadn't foreseen. Very simply put, people who were not EU nationals thought that many elements of what Theresa May proposed seemed perfectly reasonable. The idea of an ID card of some sort being used to establish your employability. For people who are already here, we are yet... Am I right in saying we haven't yet got a clue about what we're going to do to attract people who we're going to need, not least because, as Deloitte Touche reports today, just shy of half of skilled EU nationals currently living here are contemplating departing. Statistic will come as no surprise whatsoever to anybody who's listened to this programme for even a couple of minutes over the course of the past 6 months, because this is what we've done. It's like a conjuring trick, isn't it? We've been so focused on the cups and the ball. We've been so focused on these largely mythical migrants, the ones on posters and the ones in Daily Mail editorials and the ones who sort of scare us at night because we think that they're waiting outside planning to steal all our biscuits. Those ones, that's all we've been talking about. Unskilled, these dread phrases, mass unskilled migrate. We've all been talking about that. Everyone's been focusing on that. So no one's actually stopped to think about all the ones that we do want. You know, no one's ever stopped to think, really, until recently, about how are you going to actually change the mood of a country that appears profoundly unwelcoming to people. Oh, no, we're not unwelcoming at all. Every single EU migrant I know has been told by somebody who voted to leave the European Union that they didn't mean you. They didn't mean you. Who did you mean then? Well, you know, Abu Hamza. That kind of thing. That I know it's a slight simplification, but sadly not as much of a simplification as intelligent people listening might fondly and naively imagine. So what we've done now is kind of tell the people that we, quotes, need or, quotes, want the circumstances in which they'll be allowed to stay here. And I just want to know how you feel about those circumstances, how you feel about that offer. I haven't read right through the proposal, but I have one friend who is French. He used to work here as a producer. He is now a solicitor, a career move that he made because he started a family and wanted to earn more money and therefore pays considerably more tax. And his understanding of it, I was in touch with him last night, his understanding of it is that if he has to apply for residency, even though he's already got it. He has to reapply for residency, and if he leaves the country for a significant period of time, his family, bearing in mind, of course, live in France, during the next 2 years, then he might have his residency refused. That's his understanding. He might be wrong, but how's he going to feel? He's a solicitor, does an awful lot of work for people who can't afford to pay for their legal fees. He's essentially providing legal representation to poor British people. The scumbag. We heard earlier in the week from various other professionals from the City of London, the banking sector, right through to teaching and more importantly, I think, healthcare, of people who just feel profoundly unwelcome. Not just the psychiatrist who was abused, the French psychiatrist, the French NHS psychiatrist, who was abused on the tube and told to go back to Poland shortly after the result came in, but also, you know, people whose experiences haven't been violent, but have just been subtle, a subtle shift. Hearing people talk about why they voted in the way that they voted and then going, oh, sorry, I didn't mean you, doctor. Oh, sorry, I didn't mean you, lawyer. I didn't mean you, nurse. I didn't mean you. All of that. So, yes, okay, the fruit pickers are already quitting these shores. They, I think, would have been on the list of unskilled mass immigration, right? Vacancies up to 1,500 in last month. 12 months ago, there were 134 vacancies in that sector. That's before we've gone. They're just not coming because they don't feel welcome. We've created... What's the opposite of a welcome mat? We seem, and I want to be wrong, you know that I do, but we seem to have created an unwelcome mat. And Brexit has put that unwelcome mat outside the door of the United Kingdom. For the record, and I'm wasting my breath on this because people always hear what they want to hear on these issues, huge numbers, including very, very good friends and family members of mine, voted to leave the European Union and would never in a million years have countenanced the idea of putting out an unwelcome mat to skilled workers from other countries. But I've got a horrible feeling that unwelcome mat isn't just laid out for people who are thinking of coming here. It's now laid out for people who are already here, who under Theresa May's terms and conditions will be allowed to stay here, but who object viscerally and emotionally and intuitively to the use of the word allowed. I don't want to live somewhere where I'm allowed to stay. I want to live somewhere where I genuinely feel welcome. So how do we do that together? Whatever your views on this, however you voted in the referendum, how do you bridge the gap between allowed and welcome? I don't think you can. And I think this is the big wake-up call we've got coming. I think this is the time bomb of uncontrolled mass emigration. 47% of skilled workers already thinking of leaving, according to research published today by Deloitte Touche. And then at the other end of the skill set, you've got massive, massive problems. And it's even made the Archers the problems with getting people to pick fruit. It's a storyline in the Archers. So if you are somebody who is allowed to stay here, how do you feel about what Theresa May announced yesterday? If you've been through it with a fine-tooth comb, 03456060973. If you're reacting fairly emotionally to newspaper headlines or me on the wireless, 03456060973. I want to know how you feel, that's all. I don't, at the moment, think that how I feel matters, or how somebody cheering saying, yay, get rid of those French psychiatrists, which happened on my Twitter the other day, inevitably. Because a country facing a mental health crisis, if it needs anything, then it's fewer psychiatrists. That's absolutely clear to some of these chompers. But for the rest of us, how would you feel if you'd been shifted from feeling welcome to feeling permitted, from being welcome to being allowed, from being welcome to being not welcome, but tolerated? Maybe I'm over-egging it. You tell me, because I need to speak to people from the other 27 EU countries about whether or not this slightly semantic shift that I detect from welcome to allowed is as profound or as problematic as I think it would be for me if I was in your position living in France or Ireland. Actually, I could live in Ireland because I can get by with English, can't you? Don't have to speak Gaelic. So if I was living in Ireland and they'd voted to leave the European Union and I'd felt, as Irish as I don't know, Jimmy Cricket, and then suddenly you turn around and say, these are the things you have to do if you want to stay in the only home you've ever known. That's all. I want to examine that. How do you feel about the proposals that Theresa May has put in place? 0345 6060 973. And if like me, you're not directly affected by this, but you are, maybe because I've just explained it, or maybe because you've been mulling it over for the last 24 hours or so anyway, do you recognise that description of an unwelcome mat? Has Britain laid out an unwelcome mat? Not just for people that might come here in the future, but for people who've come here in the past. Unwelcome. Is that how you feel? It's coming up to 11:15. You're listening to James O'Brien on LBC. Phone lines are open. The number you need is 0345 6060 973 is the number. Hit those numbers now. You will get through. I don't know how busy this will get because I'm kind of confining it, leading Britain's conversation, to people who aren't originally from Britain. But to me, you're my friends, you're my neighbours, you're my colleagues, you're my children's classmates and their parents. You're my doctors and my nurses. You're my people. Except you're not, are you, anymore? Because of, I don't know, terms and conditions. So, I mean, if you're listening on the Costa del Sol, actually, how would you feel if the Spanish government, or in this case the European Union, suddenly announced that you had to get an ID card, or you had to do certain things that you'd never had to do before? The thing is that when I first read what Theresa May was proposing yesterday, I actually thought it was quite equable. My initial reaction was, well, that's not unreasonable. And then somebody said to me, well, you don't have to do it. I went, no, I know, but it doesn't seem that unreasonable for the people that do have to do it. She goes, yeah, but automatically there's another division in a country that's never felt more divided. I don't know, though. It's a suggestion. I use the image, the metaphor. Have we laid out an unwelcome mat and lost all control, if you will, over who we can and can't attract to our country? Tiziana is in the Aldwych. Tiziana, what would you like to say?
Hi, James. I'm an Italian academic. I've been on and off in this country for about 20 years.
Working at King's College?
LSE.
LSE. I was going from the geography of the Aldwych. Okay, so you're coming over here teaching our children complicated subjects.
Yeah. Okay. And my family is British, my children are British, my partner is British. I made this my home. I am the European Union dreamt when I was a teenager of rolling over the green fields in England. Anyway, I came to this country thinking that I could come in and out whenever I wanted, and all of a sudden that's been taken away from me. I don't accept it really fully, the result of the referendum, but anyway, we have to accept it. But yes. Then all of a sudden, I can't really go off and live outside in 2 years, and my family can come back in, and I can't anymore.
Are you sure? I mean, I'm sure you've read things more closely than I have. But
my understanding is, look, I can apply for citizenship whenever I want. It's not the question of whether I can't or...
Are you allowed to have dual citizenship with Italian?
Yes,
you are, because some of EU countries don't allow that, do they? So the citizenship becomes a much bigger obstacle for people to contemplate. They have to sort of give up their birthright.
All sorts of complicated pictures there. But it's just unfair that you come in on the presumption that you can stay, and it's the basis where you can come in and out, and all of a sudden that right is taken away from you. It's actually massive, and it depresses you, and it puts you down.
I think I get that.
The idea of the ID is almost like putting a brand on you. Short of putting a black band on your arm, it just differentiates you quite strongly.
And this is emotional.
It's very.
But it's evidence based. You feel that because you will be required to prove your right to be here when you moved here, it was never in question. That's what's changed.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, even just going through the permanent residency, which I've just done, going through all those questions.
I've got to do it again.
And I had to recollect basically all of my life and all the pieces of papers, which was quite depressing. And now going through this again, it's just not fair. And why should she do that when the EU is actually giving the right to British citizens just straight away to stay? What's the point, really? to create misery for 3 million people who have been contributing so much to this country. We're already losing a lot of the culture and richness of being in the EU. Now you're losing also those people who potentially could live. Honestly, I've been looking at jobs in Switzerland.
Really?
Yesterday. Yeah, because there is that feeling that you can't really touch it. Again, as you said, everyone tells you it's not you, including my father-in-law, who was rejoicing from the result of the referendum the day after, and I reminded him that I was actually EU as well.
What did he say?
He said, at last we've taken back control and we're getting rid of. And both myself and my partner replied, actually, you see, we don't agree. It was actually very depressing that day. But anyway, so...
But there was still hope. There was still hope that things could have been arranged in such a way that didn't make you feel less welcome than you did before. And they promised that they put epic amounts of effort into it. It's not people like you. We just want to control. It's so bovine, that claim, isn't it? We want to control it because that means they would get to decide whether or not you come here to teach at the LSE.
Absolutely.
You decide that, not them. No one decides that but you.
No, I completely agree.
So how do you control immigration unless you control the minds of 70 million people across continental Europe? It's absolutely insane. Control immigration. We've got a shortage of fruit pickers, let alone psychiatrists, academics. Oh, but we're controlling You're not. If you're controlling it, there wouldn't be any vacancies. You can't control it, can you? You can't control it. That's the point.
No, I agree. You can't control it. And I mean, academia is completely messed up. I mean, with the students, and now we're going to recruit people to come in, and the academics and the brightest minds, and it's going to be a serious aftershock. And I don't know how they're going to handle it.
And at risk of sounding a bit, I don't know, trite, glib, inadequate. Is there anything that could change the way you feel? What could change the way you feel? You know, with Brexit as a given, with the fact that we're pressing ahead because Brexit means Brexit.
Change of government.
Well, I hate to break it to you, but Jeremy Corbyn spent most of his life viewing the European Union as a sort of neoliberal conspiracy designed to keep... Go on.
I mean, I'm not actually claiming that I'm a Corbyn fan, but just the fact that foreign policy, his main sentence was foreign policy would be based on human rights. Isn't that refreshing?
Well, yes, it is. It might be naive, but it can be both. It can be refreshing and naive. Tiziana, I'm sorry you feel that way. I don't know if you know. I studied at the London School of Economics, and it was always when I first moved to London. So it's always been an absolute crucible of internationalism. It's why the Webbs and George Bernard Shaw and the other Fabians set it up in the first place, so that Britain would be looking out at the world and providing a degree of intellectual and moral leadership as well. I fear that we might be surrendering that role.
Hopefully not.
Hopefully not, and it depends on people like you, and you don't currently feel welcome. Nick is in Hemel Hempstead. Nick, what's going on?
Hello, James. Thank you for your show. Really good. Until yesterday, until I read the news on the website, I felt really, sure, comfortable. I wasn't scared at all. Both my wife and I work here. We got married here, kids here. We have mortgage, cars, jobs, everything, right? We have permanent residency. When I read the fact that the permanent residency won't be valid anymore, that's when I got worried,
Really?
I was thinking, how are they going to check 3.2 million people, 3.2 million applications, 5 years each? That's 16 million years they have to check.
It's about 4,500 a day.
Right. How are they going to do that?
Don't ask me.
And what happens, for example, my wife stayed home and raised the kids. So for the last 5 years, she doesn't have proof that she's been in the country because she's been raising the kids. She wasn't working. She didn't get any benefits or nothing. How is she gonna prove that she's been in the country for the last 5 years if she can't prove that?
I don't know. Actually, I know it's a rhetorical question, but I mean, off the top of my head.
There's so many problems with the things I read there. What's going to happen with the people that don't really actually they don't have English skills, very good English skills? I just went through the permanent residency. It's like 90 pages.
Yeah, I know.
You need to prove 5 years of your life You have to prove every time you've been in the country and out, how long you stayed. And if your English is not, if your English is good, you can't do it. You need
No, well, we spoke to a gentleman on the Isle of Wight whose wife is a DPhil from Oxford University, and he'd had to hire a solicitor in Reading to talk her through her application for residency. This was 2 days ago, before he would have found out yesterday. She's going to have to go through it all again in a new system, which hasn't yet been explained, and will, as you point out, involve 3.2 million people being processed by the Home Office by March 2019. It's mad. It's actually mad.
In 2016, there were tens of thousands of applications, and the delays were like up to 6 months. There was tens of thousands. What's going to do with 3.2 million? My question is why the people that already have permanent residency, why they just give them permanent residency anyway? Because they already proved 5 years. What's the point of making them go through all that process again? It's just wasting money, wasting time, wasting government money.
Do you think it's deliberate? Do you think the idea is that the sort of the chomping anti-British patriots, the ones who would rather define or determine the ethnicity or the colour of their neighbours than live in a thriving, vibrant economy or country where people do their level best to recognise what they have in common and get along with each other? Do you think actually there is a deliberate attempt now to put the former in the box seat and say, well, look, the only way we can really reduce immigration on the scale that we've promised we're going to is by making this country profoundly unattractive to everybody?
I see no reason why people that already have permanent residency need to apply again. There's no reason. There's no reason. Just wasting money. There's people that can't afford to go to solicitors. There are people that already just make...
Well, they do say the new process will be much simpler than the old process, to which you respond by saying, well, why the hell do I have to do the new process if I've already got through the more complicated old process?
I already paid for everything. I already wasted time. You need to go to the bank and bank statement. You need to call HM Revenue and Customs to get proof of paying taxes. You need to go to the job center to get proof that you didn't get any benefits. All that, it's not just the £65 that you have to pay. It's all the time wasted. It's days filling in forms, and now they're telling me, oh, you have to do it all over again.
Do you get a refund for the money? How much did it cost? It cost you 1,500 quid to apply for residency, didn't it?
No, for residency, it costs you £65 for if you don't pay any solicitor, right?
So it must be the citizenship, perhaps, that comes with a much bigger cost.
Yeah, citizenship is about at least £1,500.
Okay,
I can apply for citizenship in October, but I don't know if I can do that now because I already saved the money. I already did because you have to do the English and Life in the UK test.
And maybe we've just answered your question. Maybe the reason why they're resetting the residency is so that people who are poised or on the brink of being able to apply for citizenship won't be able to, or am I being too cynical?
I think you're right, because I was thinking, I even went for the test, because you have to go for the test, you have to get the money ready, then it's quite a lot of money. For one person, if you have a family of 4, that's £6,000.
Yeah.
That's how can I afford that?
How many people could find that in the drop of a hat wherever they were born? Nick, thank you, mate. I feel for you, I really do. I still hold, as a Brit, as an Englishman, I still hold to the idea that we will prove to be better than we currently fear we are being, but I'm running out of proof, I'm running out of evidence, and I'm finding that image of the unwelcome laid out at the White Cliffs of Dover increasingly hard to shrug off. It's 11:31. We play a little game just as an illustration of how absolutely bonkers things have become in this country at the moment. I just want you to imagine that this is a news bulletin, okay, from last week. Prime Minister Jeremy Corbyn has made his way to Buckingham Palace to meet the Queen after securing the votes in Westminster of the 7 Sinn Féin MPs who currently don't take up their seats by promising £1.5 billion to the Northern Ireland Executive. Now what would happen? Given the run-up to the last election, if Jeremy Corbyn had done a deal with Sinn Féin in order to secure a majority that he came a hell of a lot closer to securing than anybody expected, including him, what would have happened? Britain could have gone off like a tinderbox. But we don't do consistency or objectivity anymore in any way, shape or form. So if Theresa May had done a deal with Sinn Féin in order to get these votes for the Queen's speech, the reaction has to be identical. So you could be cautiously optimistic about both. You could find the idea of Jeremy Corbyn doing a deal with Sinn Féin. Okay, I mean, I don't quite see how they're going to be able to sustain the rigorous impartiality requirement of the Good Friday Agreement, but, you know, at least we've got a government, and then you could be cautiously optimistic about the DUP deal. Say, well, look, all the money's going to be spent on all of Northern Ireland, so it's not really like a bribe. But no one's reacted the same. No, I don't think there's a single person on the planet, possibly with the possible exception of me, who's responded to the DUP deal in exactly the same way that I would have responded to Jeremy Corbyn getting into bed with Sinn Féin. Just yet another illustration of how strange things are at the moment. But, hey, these are theoretical and academic pursuits that I describe. It's not my life that's being affected, not yet, not materially. I might lose friends, I might lose neighbours, kids leaving my daughter's school, mum and dad moving to Spain and Germany, in this case, just the only two I've spoken to so far. But you know, in terms of actual meaningful change to me, I'm paid enough to absorb the collapse in the pound, and hopefully there'll always be this kind of work around for people, regardless of what else is going on across the land. I should be okay, but you know... Maybe not everybody's going to be. And it's Theresa May's plans for the future laid out yesterday. Theresa May's plans for your future that I'm talking about this hour. I just want to find you a really powerful text. It's really important. I liked this one. I celebrated my Scouse mate's Polish daughter's first Holy Communion with my Irish wife on Saturday, says Izzy. I loved it. That's my country, and I just won't let these odd Brexiteers take it away from me. Well, I mean, maybe they don't want to take it away, and maybe, just maybe, it's not as bad as you and I fear. But where's the one gone about the wife and the husband? I'll find it in a moment, I promise. Steve's in Maple Cross. Steve, what would you like to say?
Thanks for taking my call, James.
You're welcome, Steve.
I'd just like to say I'm extremely disappointed by this whole process. Just to give you a bit of background, I married my wife in 2005, a fantastic French woman. You know, we have some beautiful kids from British and French background. They've got dual citizenship. It was very easy to get that. Just the whole process of how she feels. I mean, we had a chat yesterday. We sort of sat down at the table because the kids had, you know, picked up on the, you know, a little bit of the vibes, and we always have quite an open conversation about Brexit and the rest of it. And just the kids sort of saying, well, you know, does that mean mummy has to go, leave the country, you know? And my mum explained to my wife explaining to them, no, you know, this means that, you know, mum will probably have to go and get dual citizenship, which means, you know, becoming a British citizen as well.
Are you allowed to do that as a French woman?
Well, yes, you are.
You are. So France and Italy. I should really be doing my own research, shouldn't I? Not getting you to do it for me. I should have a list of the countries that don't allow their citizens to take out dual citizenship. But I'm glad that there's a route out.
No. Yeah, there is a route out. I mean, we didn't know at first, but we were kind of thankful for the fact that it was. You know, and just literally, you know, you talk about us putting out, you know, the carpet and saying, look, you know, unwelcome carpet. That's exactly how she feels. You know, she's worked here since she came over here at the age of 19, you know, and has been here for 20 years. Speaks better English than me. In fact, she's studying an English literature course at the same time as she's working.
Coming over here, upholding English culture.
Yeah, absolutely. And the fact that she feels now that, you know, I have to go through an English exam. I have to spend, I don't know, upwards of plus side of £1,000 to become a British citizen, just so that she can, you know, keep everything that she has here. You know, the fact that the kids are asking questions, pertinent questions that they shouldn't have to ask. You know, of whether mum is staying over here. You know, the fact that we're having to have conversations with neighbours of ours who are in similar situations, who are asking us questions, because, you know, we've got Polish neighbours on one side, and then we've got Spanish neighbours on the other side, you know, and then we having to go through this whole kind of internal examination of a process that none of us have bought into, that when we first were growing up, you know, being kids, looking at the wider world and the scope of what we can do with our lives, thinking we've got such an open culture in Europe. In England, we've got this fantastic multiculturalism that allows us, gives us the expanse of the universe to do what we need to do.
Freedom.
And now to be in a situation where this is all, you know, literally the carpet's been pulled from underneath us.
Can I ask you to climb a mountain for me? And can you imagine? Because I try very hard to do this, and I think you're probably going to be like me, and you just haven't got the right experiences or the right outlooks on this. Can you imagine someone who's listening to this now? They're listening to you and me talk, and when you said, "I've got Polish neighbours on one side and Spanish neighbours on the other," that's the point at which they sort of shuddered and went, "Ah, yes, exactly. That's how awful thing." Can you get your head around that mindset? Because it's out there and it's big.
I just can't understand this. Where do they think culture comes from? Where do they think that, you know, British culture comes from? Where do they think that, you know, the fact of being a European means that you've got now open book to experience so many different things, not just your insular identity? I mean, well, what do they think Spanish food comes from? Where do they think Italian food comes from? Where do they think Portuguese food comes from?
Lidl.
Where do they think Indian food comes from?
I don't know, mate. I mean, that's the thing, isn't it? That's the, and I don't know whether you reach for bigger weapons to win this sort of battle of ideology, or whether you put down the weapons you've been using and now just try to say to people, look, I'm married to a French woman. I live next door to some Poles on one side, and there's some Spaniards on the other side, and we're all just like you, except not as racist.
I think, James. I think that's exactly what you say. I don't know where to go from here. I mean, I'm even contemplating an opportunity to work in France. You know, because it's there, and because I think when I go over there and work, they're like, well, come over here. You know, and that means taking out our taxes, our economy, our own personal wealth outside of the country. Just because. And it's brick wall time. Is you just presume that if you explain what you've explained to me to anybody, they'll recognise that something horrible and wrong is unfolding. But people don't. They'll still cheer. I couldn't quite, even with my long and bitter experience of the looniest fringes of social media, when that clip of the psychiatrist last week, Andra, a psychiatrist working in the NHS, coming over here, looking after our mentally ill, describing not only being abused in public, but also having patients essentially celebrating it and not getting why that upset her and hurt her. So she's moving back to France with her Greek husband, who also works in a similar field. And the clip went, around the world like clips do these days. And people were celebrating. Like, bon voyage, au revoir, haha, see you then, bye-bye, don't let the door slap your ass on the way out. And you sit there thinking, this is a psychiatrist who looks after mentally ill people in Britain, most of whom will be British. And you're pleased that an already cut to the bone mental health service is suffering. How can anybody celebrate that? And I don't think I've got an answer to that question anymore. I don't think I have an answer to that, James. All I can say is it seems to me as some form of xenophobic insanity, because it's just increasingly at odds with, just a human approach to anything in life. I can't understand how we're in a position now, whereas people who have been welcoming, who have fought a world war just so that people can actually be free, I mean, it's crazy. It must be a form of insanity. It has to be. Collective insanity.
I'll read you something from Lorraine. I mean, it won't comfort you, but at least it'll reflect your reality. My husband came here when he was 2 months old, James, and he'll be 50 next month. We grew up listening to the same music, taking the same exams, partying all through the 90s, etc., etc. He's as British as I am, except he holds a Dutch passport. Now he's going to be put on a list, and I'm not. Such division and such awful undertones. Now, I can't tell Lorraine to wind her neck in and calm down, because that's like somebody telling me how I am allowed to feel. That's how she feels. That's how your wife feels. It's how you feel. And nobody cares.
No one cares at all. I think something has got to be done, though. Something has got to change. There has got to be a potential way out of this, because I'm very, very sure, just from talking to people who I know in similar situations, we're going to lose out on a whole load of highly skilled, highly trained individuals who contribute to this country, who love this country, and are going to go elsewhere. And
when I say to them, when somebody, I won't do it because I'm not that daft, but someone's going to say, no, you're still allowed to come. It's just the people on that poster we're trying to keep out. It's just the people in the Daily Mail it's just the drunk driver from Lithuania. You're allowed to come. People will turn back and say, why would we want to?
They are already saying that. They are already feeling that way. And this isn't a kind of me just being emotional because it's my wife and it's personal. I have conversations with professionals who I work with in an international company. And believe me, they're already making moves. They're already making tracks to either head back home or elsewhere where they are more welcome.
Because
and their skills are upheld.
It's taken even me a year to clock this, but the notion of controlling immigration was the biggest lie of all, wasn't it? You can't control immigration. To control immigration, you get to decide who comes. But if they don't want to, you can't. It's 11:46. Have we got any EU nationals on the line who are comfortable with what happened yesterday? Have we got any people living here who because Andy in Amersham thinks we're handpicking callers, Caroline. So can we find an EU national who's happy with what Theresa May announced yesterday? Keep a couple of phone lines free. I'd hate for Andy to presumably doesn't think Neil Armstrong walked on the moon either, bless him. So that's the question. How do you feel about what you were told yesterday you will have to do to stay at home? 03456060973. Presuming, of course, that if you live here, we can all agree that it is currently your home. Paolo's in Leytonstone. Paolo, what would you like to say?
Hi, Paolo. Yeah.
You're Paolo. You're Paolo. I'm James.
Yeah, it's the first time caller, so a bit emotional. Anyway,
okay, my friend.
I moved to UK 20 years ago with my girlfriend. We from Italy.
Yes.
We both sold our properties in Italy, and we both managed to buy 2 houses in London. So basically, we moved approximately nearly £1 million from Europe to UK.
Yes.
I never claimed any income, whatever. Always been paid tax, and I think I've even got blue card. I work in the travel industry. The reason why I moved to UK was for rock and roll because I like to go to gigs. and the British are the best. You can see Mogwai in London more than you can see Mogwai, I don't know, in Bologna.
Yes, gosh.
So yeah, of course, yeah. And but now we don't have any kids. And we are thinking to move to Holland. We can move our job. I can work everywhere I want and sell everything.
Why?
Yeah.
Why?
Because I'm not some kind of food that I need to be tolerated. No,
well, hang on. Let me tell you what Jim in Bradford says. The EU citizens here will by and large stay. They came for better jobs and opportunities that were unavailable to them elsewhere. The new EU migrants will also come and happily complete the relevant paperwork. I'm a non-EU migrant to the UK. It's not difficult to move, although people may be scared of the process. Nothing will change here. What are you missing that Jim can see so clearly?
That's wrong. I had a company with my brother. My brother go around in a Porsche, so I was earning loads of money more in Italy if I wanted. I had quite good money here, but that's not true. Lots of people move here for all different reasons.
For British culture, Paolo.
For rock and roll, I mean, yeah, come on, the British are the best in rock and roll. Yeah, I've been to Glastonbury, and you don't have, you got Primavera in Spain, even in Catalonia now, but before you didn't have those kind of things.
So, but just so it is almost that you feel insulted and affronted rather than sort of.
Yes, well, it's a matter of principle. It's all a matter of principle. I'm not any kind of food, and I need to be the people need to tolerate me. I just, I pay tax probably more than loads of people in UK, and I'm happy to pay tax. Of course, I'm happy to pay tax. If I can help the society. But I want to move to Holland or France, and that probably I will do if they think it's gonna stay this way, like Theresa May wanted. I'm gonna go to Holland. I've already seen a couple nice places between Utrecht. That is a lovely town.
So this is even for someone. I like to think of myself as quite modern and outward looking. I still find the idea of being that mobile incredible. What about language issues and things like that, Paolo?
Oh, they speak English there, and I can learn Dutch the same way.
That's why Brexit has happened because I just can't. Even I can't get my head around that. Just the idea that you could upend and move to another country, but you already live in a country that isn't. Where your native tongue isn't spoken. It's just, this is me as an island, insular. That's it in a nutshell, isn't it?
Yeah, before, British people used to laugh to Berlusconi for his stuff. Now Italian people laugh to Britain for Brexit. We become a bit of a joke, but anyway.
I'm
waiting what's going to happen, but I also, even the pound is quite weak. So before was worth 1.4 million euros now is probably 1.1 million euros. I can find a nice house in Utrecht and move there. And move my company there too. So.
Yes, and there'll be plenty of people listening who are cheering and they'll be waving you off at the Heathrow. But of course, that's the point, isn't it? Someone moved here because a British culture makes a decades-long contribution to the British economy, feels like it's home, absolutely loves it more than many natives do. But, you know, good riddance. Man alive. 0345 606 0973 is the number that you need. And you're perfectly entitled. I'm just worried about old Andy in Amersham. Have we got a single EU resident yet that's cool with what's going on? Have we got one? Oh, poor old Andy's he's got all this evidence that we're handpicking callers. What can I do, Andy, to prove to you that people are telling me the truth, even though you don't like the truth that you're hearing, because it makes you feel, perhaps, the closest you felt so far to stupid? Eric is in Richmond. Eric, what would you like to say?
Yeah, hi, James.
Hi, Eric.
I've been in the country for about 25 years, and I'm a German originally. I over here I started my own business. I have 10 employees, and having looked at what the government suggested yesterday, I'm very sad. My company is called Deutsch-Englische Freundschaft, which means German-English friendship. It's obviously a utopian idea that I'm very aware of doesn't exist.
What does it? Well, it does exist. It does exist. It's just looking a little bit less front and center than it used to. What does the company do with a name like that?
We do artist management. We look after musicians.
So British culture and German culture.
Yeah, very much.
Which of course are historically very, very, very closely related.
And funnily enough, the majority of my artists are non-British. I work with a lot of international artists. I have a couple of British ones, one Scottish, one English. But I just wanted to say that I've been paying taxes quite substantially. The company is very successful. And clearly my employees are doing the same. And my approach to this is I'm a European. I don't actually see myself too much as a German. I think European is what I am. And I believe that you're European, and I believe every Briton is a European as well, whether they want to be that or not. And if you want to change that, then you have to deport me, because I have no problem no longer as a European being able to live in this country if you don't want me here. I make money for you. I pay taxes. I've paid millions of taxes.
Can you articulate what makes you say that you feel that the country doesn't want you here? What is it about? Was it yesterday's announcements? Because that's still a negotiating position. It may move in one direction or another, but it's what she laid out yesterday.
For me, it's all about return. For me, it's all about the second referendum. I think that's what's going to happen, because people will inevitably see as we go through this process how toxic this is.
I don't know that that's true, to be honest with you. I think the result would be...
Obviously, I know a lot of people don't believe that. I think that's what's going to happen, because if it isn't happening, I'm not going to fill in any form. I'm not going to do anything more. I'm here as a European. If you want to deport me because I don't apply for whatever, I will do that. Wow. I will take the company. I will move the company to Europe. I cannot be here anymore if you're no longer European. And I believe that there have been whole generations over the last 20 years that are born British, that truly believe they're European, and they were devastated by this referendum. They didn't necessarily vote. Some of them couldn't vote. Some of them didn't because they didn't take it seriously. Yeah. I don't really think that the 52-48 is a true reflection of how people think. It is a bit of a moment in time. And that's why Nigel Farage and no one wants a second referendum, because they all know they're going to lose that. There's no way that... I'm not as
clear as you on that. I don't know. There's a good piece in the FT yesterday about why the referendums, unless you come in with a thumping majority one way or the other, a second referendum wouldn't necessarily... If it went 52-48 the other way, then I would be absolutely in the position of thinking that's not fair on the other side. That's not fair on the people that lost this time. 52-48 always seemed to me to be a ludicrous figure. I even argued before the referendum when certain characters were saying if it's that close, if it's 52-48, we'll have to have another one. I agreed. To settle the future of a nation on a knife edge like that seems absurd. But of course, I wasn't qualified to vote in that referendum, and I'm yet to meet anyone who was. Eric, thank you. I keep searching for phrases to offer up to people, our neighbours, our friends, our employers, our concert promoters, our rock and roll Italians, our psychiatrists, our doctors, our nurses, our business people, our teachers, our academics. I keep looking for phrases to say, look, it'll be all right. It'll be all right. But I haven't found one yet. So just gone 12:01. You're listening to James O'Brien on LBC. I might take a couple more on this. I might not. I reserve the right. We do seem to be dancing around this particular maypole quite often. I quite like this, though, on the question of why we couldn't find anyone from the European Union to tell us that they're cool with the idea. If you are that person, I'll take your call into the next hour. If you want to explain to all of the people we've just heard from why they should calm down a bit and not be as concerned. But a special shout out to Chris in Watford, who says, Chris in Watford also thinks you are handpicking callers. I'm not stupid, nor an idiot and or deluded. And that was sent 9 minutes after he texted in to tell me that he was turning his radio off. But Chris isn't stupid, or an idiot, or deluded.